Good morning, everyone. This is Nathan Lindorf with The Rational Independent. On this fine Monday morning, we're going to have a very brief Reddit rant. The top article on Reddit is something from HuffPost, and the article is 9 sentences long. I think that qualifies as pretty lightweight reporting, but we're going to go ahead. We're going to do something we've never done before. I'm going to read the whole article. Here we go. GOP megadonor pulls the plug on Ron DeSantis, cites abortion and book bans. Republican megadonor Thomas Peterfee, I'm bad at names, said he is suspending donations to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis ahead of his potential presidential campaign. I have put myself on hold, he told the Financial Times in an article published on Saturday. Because of his stance on abortion and book banning, myself and a bunch of friends are holding our powder dry. On Thursday night, DeSantis signed Florida Republicans' restrictive 6-week abortion ban into law. He has also banned Black history books and courses and moves that were apparently too extreme for Peter Fee. DeSantis, a possible challenger to former President Donald Trump for the Republican nomination, seems to have lost some momentum. In November 2022, Peter Fee was one of 5 Republican heavies to distance themselves from Trump following the GOP's poor showing in that month's midterm elections, which was largely attributed to Trump's endorsement of candidates who regurgitated his 2020 election lies. I think we need a fresh face, he said at the time. The problem with Trump is he has so many negatives he can't get elected, period. Peter Fee said he would vote for Trump if he became the GOP nominee. That's the whole thing. So let's talk a little bit about it. Why is that article that's so brief the top article on Reddit? I think there's a couple of reasons for that. This article communicates almost no content, but what it does is it gives the people on Reddit the chance to yell about and be enraged by their 3 favorite punching bags: Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, and Republican megadonors. They're all good targets of hate. So that's the summary. So let's talk about my 2 cents. My 2 cents is this. This is why direct democracy doesn't work. Because it is very easy to inflame emotion of people who are invested in a particular topic, to inflame those emotions, and to get people to overreact and to push for policies that are bad in the long term, but in the short term, they promise relief of these inflamed emotions. This is why a representative republic is much more stable, because it gives you a chance to be responsive to the needs of the people at large. To be responsive, but in a measured way, because even though a congressperson is constantly seeking re-election, they have to get re-elected every 2 years. So as soon as they get elected, they're starting their efforts to get re-elected. That gives them a 2-year window. That's their decision timeline. Everyone has a time horizon for the decisions that they make. If you are an infant, your time horizon is now or never. You have no concept of later. If you're an infant or a small child, basically, either I'm getting my treat right now, or I will never get a treat. As we grow and mature and develop, we can defer our gratification, we can defer our desires, and we can know, listen, I really want to get drunk, but it's the work week. So I'm going to wait until Friday, and then I'm going to go out and party with my friends. You want to act in a certain way, but you know it would be destructive to your life if you were to drink during the work week. And so you say, you know what, I'm going to defer that desire. If you're willing, if you want to do better in life, generally, you can almost never go wrong with pushing the time horizon out for decisions that you're making. If you're willing to defer gratification for a few years, you can get a college degree. If you're willing to push it out 10 or 20 years, then you can raise a great set of kids because you're willing to defer the things you want out of life to put other people's needs in front of you in order to build the next generation. It's not a trivial time investment at that point. You're giving a big chunk of your productive life. If you're willing to defer gratification for 30 or 40 years, then you'll be able to retire comfortably. If you're willing to defer gratification even more, then you might be able to build enough wealth to change multiple generations, or change your local community, or change your local church. So I'll toss out a couple of examples. Foundations, charitable foundations. Often you'll see someone build some wealth, and then once they have a considerable amount of wealth as a business magnate or something like that, they will say, okay, I'm going to take a chunk of this wealth, I'm going to put it into a trust, or I'm going to establish a foundation, whether it's a scholarship fund or has some other purpose. But they're trying to use that capital to impact not just the present, but also future generations. Another example would be the national park system. Whether or not I like big daddy government is irrelevant to this conversation. The fact is, legislation that locks in place and preserves the usage of certain portions of the country enables those portions of the country and their beauty to be preserved generation after generation after generation. Whereas someone acting foolishly or impulsively or short-term thinking might destroy something precious, and it's lost for future generations. The example that came to mind first is the one I agree with the least: the progressive movement in America. In the early 20th century, there was a surge of leftist thinking. It gained some real traction around the world, but it played out in different countries in different ways. In several countries around the world, it played out in a revolutionary way. And you ended up seeing two particular examples of that would be Russia and China becoming communist strongholds. Soviet socialist republics, so whatever, they were communist, becoming communist strongholds for multiple generations. In America, there were people who were motivated towards the same ends, but they chose to get there incrementally. So they began to establish a set of policies and a set of foundations and a set of institutions aimed towards those goals, but eroding the American philosophy in order to gradually, over multiple generations, shift America. Woodrow Wilson was a major proponent of this, as well as many others. That's the example of how when you extend your time horizon out, you can make a tremendous difference in the world. Ironically, the reason why a representative republic works is because the time horizon of an elected representative is, in our case, 2 years, 4 years, or 6 years, depending on the office of what you're dealing with at a federal level. But even those relatively short time frames are more moderated than the time frames of an angry mob. If you have a group of people that are furious, and they're regular people, their emotions are high, they're engaged in whatever a hot button political issue is, they are protesting, they're rioting, they are disrupting the order of business, they want change now. I mean, the chant, no justice, no peace, says basically give us what we want or we're going to continue to disrupt civil society until we get what we want. In other words, fix this now. But an elected representative says, I need to take action that increases my likelihood of getting reelected. In other words, give people what they want over the next 2 years, 4 years, whatever. In other words, their time horizon for their decisions is further out in the future, and therefore they tend to act in a more moderated way, which protects us from the worst impulses of the mob. These 9 sentences of an article, there's not a lot of substance here other than it is yet another member of the chorus that talks about, you'll notice there's a few buzzwords in this article. It talks about how Ron DeSantis has been banning Black history books and courses. That's how it's framed. That's not how he would put it. And it's not fair reporting to only represent one side of an argument, particularly if you don't inform the reader of which side you support. If you want to further inflame tensions, you can point out to people why they should not support Ron DeSantis because look at these bad things that he did, even if it's not a fair characterization. If you look at Donald Trump, he is probably not electable in the general, and he'll probably win the primary. It's one of the reasons I'm not a Republican. Republicans are kind of dumb. They're bad at this. And as far as the secret cabal of Republican mega donors, there's this weird idea that these kind of mega donors only live on the right, only support Republicans. There's super rich people that are oriented left and right, and they spread their money around in politics in order to keep being rich or to make themselves richer. They know a good investment when they see one. Here you have 9 sentences, but in those 9 sentences, we reference 3 topics that the left loves to hate, and we frame it in such a way to help people continue to be emotionally upset about this, instead of diving into any kind of substance behind these people's actions. In other words, let's take the GOP mega donor myth and break it apart for a moment, and then we're going to be done. As a regular human being, I have the right to speak. I have the right to think. I have the right to speak. I have the right to political speech. I have the right to inflammatory speech. I have the right to stupid speech. I make mistakes all the time when I make these videos. I don't say something quite right, or I get a fact wrong. I don't remember a name. I mispronounce a name. That's my right. The marketplace will decide whether or not my ideas are valuable or not valuable. And if the marketplace hates my ideas, eventually I'll probably stop doing these videos. Because if nobody wants to watch them and nobody likes them, then they're probably dumb and terrible, and I'll go away. If they are not dumb and terrible, then they're going to survive. They're going to be out there in the marketplace. They're going to be discussed and maybe even shift political opinion. Now, let's say I'm someone who wants to support a particular political candidate, and I have a platform where I present political speech, kind of what we're talking about here. If I endorse a particular candidate or have them on my show to interview them or write a book about them or whatever, I'm using speech to support a person's political campaign. It's a donation in kind. But just the same as every other principle in a market economy, time and money are interchangeable. Effort and money are interchangeable. I can exchange some good or service that I produce in exchange for money. I can take money and create or induce people to create goods or services. I had my car serviced this morning. I gave them money. They took care of my car. I talk to you guys. I create value and I get money. That's how this works. There's functionally no difference when it comes to political donations between donations in kind and donations in dollars. Because if I, for instance, have political commentary that is valuable in the marketplace and there's a lot of eyeballs on it, then if I talk favorably about a political campaign or political person or a movement, then I'm going to influence the public. My voice has a value to do that. If I don't have that, but I want to accomplish the same ends, I can write a check to a paid spokesman, to someone who already has a platform, someone who's willing to speak the words I give them, and I can get a sponsored view or a political ad or a political action committee. I can get a voice out there to make a message that tries to shift political opinion. In other words, whether I produce it and quote unquote donate it in kind, or I pay someone else to produce it, the effect is the same. Both of them are donations towards a political purpose. They are fundamentally interchangeable. The challenge I have with the left is that they like to split this baby. They like to say money donations are one thing and in-kind donations are another thing. If you look at political coverage across all the media outlets and you look at favorable versus disfavorable coverage, you can see there is a bias in the way the left presents political news, and that bias shifts public opinion. And that shift in public opinion is something that candidates would have to pay a lot of money to produce if they didn't have someone willing to produce it on their own. In other words, the bias of the media supports one side of the political aisle. It's a donation in kind. It's functionally the same thing as some secretive mega donor writing big checks to get ads or political action committees to try and sway public opinion. These are the same thing. Separate and aside from the issue that there are mega donors on the left and the right, there's also a disparity, or rather, in order to be more accurate in our thinking on this topic, we need to understand that There's nothing inherently evil about supporting and furthering a political cause you agree with. And there's nothing fundamentally different between a donation in kind or paid political speech. They are interchangeable. And so when you want to look at who's influencing the conversation, you can't just look at who's writing checks. You also need to look at who's speaking out of their own volition to provide favorable coverage to political causes. That is part of the balance of power in the marketplace of ideas. So there you go. There's my superpower. 9 sentences turned into 20 minutes of content. That's my Reddit rant for today. Good luck out there.